Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of how fame cannot protect you from your country's failures. Because, whether you like it or not, Anthony Joshua, former two-time world heavyweight boxing champion, as the time of recording, survived a car accident in Nigeria. Two people who were with him, unfortunately, did not survive that car accident. And the lesson here has nothing to do with luck. What it has everything to do is what it's like to live inside a failed system. Unfortunately, this isn't some celebrity story. What this actually is a warning to each and every one of you who live in a country that has a failed system. Before I continue, I just want to shatter that illusion that has been created in much of our heads, because we like to believe that talent protects you. We like to believe that fame insulates you. We like to believe that money creates a buffer between you and reality. But hey, guess what? It doesn't. It doesn't do that in Nigeria. And it most definitely doesn't do that in any country where systems actually don't work. You see, Anthony Joshua is one of the most disciplined, most prepared, most physically, capable human beings on the planet. But hey, guess what? None of that mattered in that moment. Because, whether you like it or not, the country will always be bigger than the individual. So I need to reframe the battle here, the picture here, and let you understand that that whether you like it or not, everywhere you go to, it's always going to be a case of the system being greater than the individual. Because when stories like this happen, people tend to ask the wrong questions. They tend to ask, what went wrong? When the real question actually is, what was already broken? The answer to that question in his case wasn't even just a case of maybe broken roads or bad roads or something. The roads seemed to be all right. But the problem was the roads, first and foremost, were being misused. A trailer parked on the side of the road and abandoned, no precautions taken whatsoever. You had that scenario, and then you had it being complemented with broken enforcement. Nobody enforcing and forcing the driver of that trailer or that truck or whatever it is, whatever that vehicle was, forcing that driver to take precautions, while parking on the side. There was a broken emergency response. Hey, guess what? No ambulance came to the scene. Broken accountability. Those who were meant to actually enforce these laws and enforce, better usage of the roads, they absolved themselves and blamed all on the driver. In a country that works, you see, so mistakes are actually survivable. But in a country that doesn't work, mistakes are fatal, whether you like it or not. This wasn't a case of bad luck. What it was a case of was a predictable incident. And if you think that's uncomfortable, hey, guess what? Here's the first uncomfortable truth, of this video. If this can happen to Anthony Joshua, let's be honest with ourselves. What are the chances of it happening to the average citizen? What chances does the average citizen actually have? Because here's the thing, we sell people, the lie that efforts equals safety, that success equals immunity. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It doesn't. You see, the system doesn't care how hard you work. It doesn't care, the road doesn't care, who you are, where you're from, what you do, or who the hell you love. The failure doesn't, check your resume. And this is why blaming individuals seems quite comforting, but, because blaming the system actually demands change. And change is something that a lot of people tend to resist, even though it actually benefits them. Because, whether you like it or not, there is an actual cultural complicity, to all this. Because this wasn't a case of infrastructure. It was actually cultural. Because most people in such countries have actually normalized danger. I'm one of them. I'm gonna lie. I'm sadly I'm guilty of that. And then at the end of the day, when we tend to act surprised when danger actually behaves like danger. We learn to live with things like bad roads. We have learned to live with poor regulations. We've learned to live with preventable deaths, and over time, dysfunction has become normal. And until it kills someone famous or someone famous enough, the conversation we don't attempt to actually have the conversation. We just wait for it to actually end the life of someone who's actually famous enough to actually force us to actually talk about this, or even force me to actually make a video about this. Because what you have here, the fight you have here, the conflict you have here, is actually a case of fame versus humanity. Or sorry, rather, fame versus reality, pardon me. Because here's the thing, Anthony Joshua, he survived. But guess what? Two of his closest friends, they didn't. I want you to sit with that. Because strength didn't save them. Status, that didn't save them either. Preparations, that definitely did not save them. Because no individual, no matter how powerful you are, can actually, outmuscle a broken environment. And this isn't about Anthony Joshua. It's actually about, all of us. All of us that are navigating systems that quietly put our lives at risk every single freaking day. And ladies and gentlemen, the real lesson here is actually quite simple. Because here's the lesson no one wants to actually say out loud. But hey, guess what? Welcome to NeoAfroTalk. I'm going to say it out loud for you all to hear, and I want you to pay attention. Fame. You see, fame? That's not protection. Talent, that's not protection. Money, definitely not protection. Understanding your environment, ladies and gentlemen, now that is protection right there. Awareness, that is protection. Systems that work, are protection. And until systems work, survival is always going to continue to be personal. And that is the most dangerous way to actually live your life. But here's the final verdict that we cannot escape, whether we like it or not. Look, Anthony Joshua's story, no matter how you want to spin it, no matter how people like Reno or Mockery or Ayo Affair on X, those guys who are being paid to be absolute useful. I don't want to use the full thing I have in my head, but useful cell swords or useful nuisances. Let me use that lightly. God, this guy disgusts me. But here's the truth, that they don't want to tell you, and that's the fact that Anthony Joshua's story should actually disturb you. What they like to know, it should disturb you. Not because he's famous, not because he's special in the eyes of It should actually disturb you because, hey, guess what? He isn't special in the eyes of a failing system. Nobody is. If you think success alone will shield you, I beg you to please think again. Because you cannot outrun the country that you live in. And until you stop pretending that individual, excellence can actually replace collective responsibility, that, hey, ladies and gentlemen, stories like this will keep continuing, will keep happening. They will continue to happen, whether you like it or not. So, hey, I think I've said enough. I've said enough for the wise. Because the truth is, and I hope this made you uncomfortable. And if this made you uncomfortable, then hey, good, mission accomplished. It actually means that, hey, you're thinking. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the NeoAfroTalk. This was the very first episode of NeoAfroTalk. And where we actually confront the truths that we're actually taught to ignore or being forced to ignore. Please do subscribe to us if you're ready for conversations like this and you don't want to sit in the middle. Because whether you like it or not, and something I've personally learned myself, is the fact that the middle is where reality goes to die. But we all want to live, don't we? So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.